Islam, the best of speech is the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the best of guidance is the guidance of His Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And the worst of matters are newly innovated matters in this religion. Dear brothers in Islam, whatever is newly innovated in this religion will lead you astray. Whatever lead you astray will lead to hellfire. In the past couple of days, obviously, a new solar cycle has started. And to most people, some people, or a lot of the people around the world, they recognize that it's a new year that we're starting. And it's the habit of many of the individuals, whether it's something they have adopted to different cultures, or whatever the state is, but it seems to be a bit of a fashion that individuals would have resolutions at that emergence of the new year. And we're talking over here about the solar year. As Muslims, we do follow the lunar cycle, not the solar cycle, but still it is a cycle that is there. Now people tend to have the habit of coming up with new resolutions, a way to kind of encourage themselves to improve themselves to one thing or another, to turn a new leaf, to say, to something that is a betterment to themselves, a quality that they have, a trait that they want to attain, a goal that they want to achieve. Now as Muslims, we do understand that it's not once a year we do this, but every day for us is an opportunity to improve ourselves. For us, every day that we wake up in the morning, we understand that it's a chance for us to start a fresh start, to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala before the night falls, before the night or the day ends. This is our perspective. It's more as Muslims, every single day is an opportunity. It's a time to change. But even then, even if it's once a year, quite often sometimes we do this. Some people do it at the beginning of Ramadan, some people do it at the beginning of Hajj, some people do it at different other times. But in the end, it's the same idea. It's an opportunity for us to change, to achieve something that is a higher level. Now this is a general statement, whatever once again that thing is. Now one thing I want to talk about today is something that we need to pay attention to and always constantly try to improve in our lives. And this has to do with our different states of nafs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned in the Quran. And when we talk about nafs over here, we're talking about the creation that occurs once our soul or spirit meets our body and we're created. This is what the nafs is referring to. Sometimes it's translated as soul, but it's a bit more specific. It's not when it's detached from the body, but no, it's when it's attached to the body. The being that we are at this moment, that inner self, is called the self, an-nafs. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned in the Quran are three different states of the nafs. So we have one, but it goes through the three different states. It's not static, consistent, but a bit dynamic. And if we ever want to improve ourselves, part of understanding how to improve it is to understand these different states and what they feel like, so that we know if we attained which state we're at. Now the lowest of levels is the nafs al-ammara bis-su', and that's mentioned in Surah Maryam. Actually, Surah Yusuf. Inna al-nafsa la'ammarahum bis-su'. This is the self or the nafs that often encourages to do evil. Often encourages the self to perform evil deeds. Ammara bis-su', continuously does it. And that is the weakest and the worst of states. And it's when yourself encourages you and tells you to do things that quite often anger Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or displeases Him. Whether by not fulfilling the obligations or falling into prohibitions. It's constantly there encouraging you, pushing you to do things that are bad. That is a nafs al-ammara bis-su'. And then you have a nafs al-lawwama, which is the nafs that blames the soul or the nafs. Quite often it blames it. Now that blaming can happen with the righteous soul, the nafs that is righteous, but also the one that is not righteous. And it blames it in two different ways, obviously. The righteous nafs, or the good nafs, it blames it by when you do not perform what pleases Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It blames you. Why did you do this? Why did you not perform Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's order? Why did you fall into prohibition? And this is a good form of blameworthiness. But it tells you that this soul quite often falls into the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and so it blames it, which is something that is good. It keeps you in check. Now the other type of blameworthiness, which is the not good type, is when the nafs blames the individual or its possessor with why didn't it do what it wants. And this is the bad soul. When it misses an opportunity of disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it blames it. Why didn't you go with your friends and look at how much fun they had, for example, and all they're doing is disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is the state of blameworthiness. But we don't want this one. The other one is more of a healthy state. Now the highest of the levels of the nafs, which is the nafs al-mutma'inna, the tranquil nafs, the nafs that is in a state of serenity, in a state of assurance, that is assured, or the state of assurance that it's in. And this is the one that I'm talking about, that we should have an intention, whether it's once a year to change ourselves or every single day, to achieve that highest of the levels. And for the remainder of the khutbah, inshaAllah, I'm going to talk about why we want to achieve this. What does it feel like so we can understand it? And what can we do to achieve it? So that's three different things. So the first one is, why should we even bother trying to attain this al-nafs al-mutma'inna? Well, the reason behind it is, if we understand that the reality of the world that we live in, that's the journey that we are going through. And this journey has an expiration date. It's limited in its time. And throughout this journey, you're asked to achieve a goal, which is to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as much as you can. To draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the best way possible that you can in that time frame. However, in that time frame, it's not a journey that is without difficulty, but rather there are distractions on the path. There are tribulations and hardships that sometimes will result in discomfort, will result in a state that we are not stable, in a state of perhaps feeling more on the downside. And it's that tranquil, or that nafs al-mutma'inna, that enables us to go through this journey. It gives us a sense of composure, a sense of tranquility, a sense of serenity that we need to be able to put aside those distractions, to be able to realize that there's an end to this journey that we look forward to, that this will end, and that there's something at the end of it that we're longing for. And you're continuing to do this throughout this journey, and you want to achieve this nafs al-mutma'inna, so that at the end of that journey would be among those who the angels of mercy, when they come down to take our souls, the angel of death would tell it, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna. It would call it with a tranquil soul. Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, O a soul that is in a state of serenity, in a state of assurance. Because this is how it lived the majority of its life. And so it's going to call it in the best form possible. And it will tell it, Ya ayyatuha an-nafs al-mutma'inna, rji'i ila rabbiki. Return to your Lord. Radiyatan mardiyya. And so it is that self, and this is why we need to attain it, because at the end of that journey, these angels will tell to it, O tranquil soul, or a soul that's in a state of serenity and assurance, return to your Lord and you will be pleased. Radiyah, you will be pleased. Why? With the reward at the end. But not just that, mardiyah, and that you are a pleasure to your Lord, which means your Lord is also pleased with you. فَادْخُلِي فِي عِبَادِي وَادْخُلِي جَنَّتِي. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will tell, enter among my slaves and servants and enter my Jannah. And so for us to be able to attain that, we need to attain that tranquil soul, or the soul that is a mutma'inna, the state of serenity, the state of assurance. This is why we should try to attain it. Now, what does it feel like when an individual attains that level? Now, once again, as we mentioned, there's 3 of them. And it's not static, it's dynamic. Yes, each one of us has a state that is a bit predominant. But it doesn't mean it cannot improve or change. And this is important because it means that we can always improve, and this is what we're trying to aim for. Now, what does it feel to have that state of tuma'nina, serenity and assurance? Well, an individual who has that status, or a nafs al-mutma'inna who has attained that, is a nafs that is content and pleased and feels a sense of assurance in its belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning that it feels peace and tranquility and assurance when it remembers its Lord in a way that nothing else can give it that assurance or tranquility or that state of serenity. When it's going through that path, it's in a state of peace. Even when the calamities befall it from the different sides, it's still in that state of composure because it has a sense of trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that whatever He had decreed would happen. Whatever's going to befall him will befall them. Whatever's going to miss them will miss them. And so it's a state of ease and composure. That self that has a tuma'nina, a nafs al-mutma'inna, longs to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It feels pleasure in the obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It feels pleasure when it is worshipping Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It has a sense of tranquility and peace when it's reading the Quran. It's always longing to meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so it's working for it, and so it is prepared. And I'm trying to give us a sense, all of us, of what it means to achieve it, so that when we achieve it, we feel that sense of sweetness. That is that state. And so, for example, when it comes to a time of prayer, we don't feel a sense of burden of heaviness, but no. We're like the Prophet ﷺ. When the adhan time comes, we leave everything, including our families, and we're longing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Like Musa alayhi salam, when he said, وَعَجِلْتُ إِلَيْكَ رَبِّي لِتَرْضَى, I hasten to you, my Lord, so that you would be pleased. That is the connection. That is the emotional state of that soul. That is the relationship it has with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so if you notice, it's the highest of ranks. And truly, this is why it deserves to be called at the end with the most beautiful of names at the time of death. Because it built that relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then the last thing is, how do we attain it? We'll address that inshallah in the second khutbah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لكم الغفور الرحيم. إن الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. So how is it that we can attain that النفس المطمئنة? I'm going to try to mention 4 things quickly, inshallah, to make it short so we can remember. But one of the most important things is to ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us that النفس المطمئنة. Dua. Because even the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wasallam, who's the best of human beings, the person who has the most taqwa of all the human beings, he would make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he would say, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha wa zakkiha anta khayru man zakkaha. And the dua means, Allahumma ati nafsi taqwaha, oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, give my nafs, this is what we're talking about over here, my nafs, taqwaha, it's taqwa. Because a nafs who is in a state of taqwa is also in a state of tama'nina. But then sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would also ask, wa zakkiha, and purify it, O my Lord. فَأَنْتَ خَيْرُ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا. You are the one who best to purify it. Dua. Because in that dua, you're acknowledging that you yourself are weak and you're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That itself is an indication of submission. That in itself is an act of worship. That in itself is the first few steps for you towards attaining the nafs al-mutma'inna. Because you know you cannot attain it without Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so your dependence on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That sense of self, that need to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Dua. But then comes the second part, which is also important. Because this is where the work really starts. Because attaining a nafs al-mutma'inna requires effort. It does require a lot of work, like anything else you'd want to attain and succeed in. And the reason I'm saying it is because many of the scholars tell us that our normal predisposition, our initial state, is not a nafs al-mutma'inna, but rather it is a nafs al-ammara bis-su', the one that itself quite often encourages you and tells you, orders you to do evil. Why? Because we are created and born ignorant. And so we are unaware of what is important for us or what is beneficial for us. And so that nafs tends to decline to that direction. And so we need to work through the different levels until we attain a higher level. And so if this is our normal state, we understand we need a lot of work. Which comes to that second point, what we need to do, which was the dua in the Prophet ﷺ when he said, Allahumma zakkiha, purify it. So we need to purify ourselves. Now what I mean by purify it? It means that you eliminate the negative aspects that you have, that are inherent in us. And we all have some negative aspects. But we can discipline it. We can bring it down, tone it down. We can trim it. And at the same time, nourish and develop the positive qualities. This is a nutshell what tazkiyah is. And we have to do this. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in Surah Shams, He had taken 11 oaths. And then the last one He said, قَدْ أَفْلَحَ مَنْ زَكَّاهَا وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. Truly He has succeeded, the one who purifies it. That is our only way to succeed, to purify it. وَقَدْ خَابَ مَنْ دَسَّاهَا. And He has failed the one who has given its corruption, or has buried it in its corruption. The nafs has been given the example. And Ibn al-Qayyim mentioned this. He says people are, regarding the nafs, there are two different types. One individuals, a group of individuals, their nafs controls them and it rides them. And so if it controls you and it rides you, it will direct you to what is bad. And then the other group, they have control of their nafs and they ride it. And so they will move it to what is beneficial. Another example given to the nafs, that it's like the wild steed or the wild horse that requires to be tamed. Once it's tamed, it can take you to whatever you need. This is where tazkiyah comes in. I'm going to mention quickly, the best form of tazkiyah is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it's reading the Quran or just doing adhkar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبِ. Verily by the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that the hearts would settle, have a state of tuma'nina, tranquility, serenity. This is the one sure way to achieve that state. And so the more we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more we read the Quran, the more it imprints on us. the less we read the Quran, the less we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the more distant we are from that level. There's a correlation. Tazkiyah. It is important. Now the third thing we can do, and it's tightly remembered with having to discipline our nafs, and is to defy it. To defy it in whatever it desires. And I'm talking over here the negative desires. I'm not talking about desiring to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But when we're referring to a desire, we're talking about the negative things. The ones, the desires that are associated with the displeasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now when our self tends to draw to that direction, if you defy it, this is important. Because this is part of the taming process. It will be difficult at the beginning. It will be difficult in our initial awakening moments that we realize, oh my God, I'm so far away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I need to do something. Because we're still weak. And so it will take some effort. However, with consistency and dua, it becomes easier and easier, because then you're taming your nafs. You're weakening it, but you yourself are becoming stronger. You're becoming more in control. Defying the nafs. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةَ هِيَ الْمَأْوَى. وَأَمَّا مَنْ خَافَ. But for those who have feared the position of their Lord, وَنَهَى النَّفْسَ عَنِ الْهَوَى, and it forbid or prevented its soul from its inclinations, from its unlawful inclination, then what is the reward? فَإِنَّ الْجَنَّةِ, verily the Jannah is their abode. So this is tightly linked with the other. Defying, preventing yourself from the negative inclinations. The last and final thing I can mention in this time frame that we can do to attain the nafs al-mutma'inna, which is also an important process. In Arabic it's called muhasaba, which means really putting yourself in a state of questioning, accountability. You are asking yourself, how did I perform? What is my state? What is my status? How am I doing? Am I getting closer or moving further away? And you're doing this while you are addressing yourself. Umar ibn al-Khattab had mentioned this, and he said, حَاسِبُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُحَاسَبُوا. Account yourself, make yourself accountable before you are held accountable. Judge yourself before you are judged. وَزِنُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ قَبْلَ أَن تُوزَنُوا. And weigh yourself before you are weighed. Because it's easier in this world before the hereafter. The only way we figure out, for example, how our financial state is if we check. Similarly, we will never understand what state we're in unless we check. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us among those who are able to attain the tranquil soul, nafs al-mutma'inna, to overcome ourselves, to become better individuals, those who are a source Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with, so that we, at the end of our life, be among the ones who are angels called to and say, "O tranquil soul, come to your Lord. Come to a pleasure for your Lord when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased with us, and enter the Jannah, your abode, with the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and those who are higher of ranked. اللهم اغفر للمؤمنين والمؤمنات الأحياء منهم والأموات وارحمنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين ونسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بعلمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم آت نفوسنا تقواها وزكها أنت خير من زكاها أنت وليها مولاها وارحمنا برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء اللهم اعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم اعز الإسلام والمسلمين اللهم اعز الإسلام والمسلمين وانصرنا على أعدائك أعداء هذا الدين وردنا إليك ردا جميلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى اللهم وسلم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين ومن تبعهم بإحسان يوم الدين. يا عباد الله قوموا إلى صلاتكم يرحمكم الله.